welcome you. Come on in, pull up a chair by the fire. We are broadcasting to you right from the little station on Commercial Street, bringing you another immersive deep dive here on Chesterton Radio. We are gathered in the reading room today, and, well, the tea is hot and the fire's going, so get comfortable.
It is the absolute perfect setting for today's discussion, honest.
It really is, because today we are unpacking a really unique piece of audio storytelling that you, our listener, actually shared with us. It's a broadcast called Woodland Stories, Book 1, The Lantern at Bramble Bridge.
And, on the surface, it sounds like this gentle, quiet thing.
Right, totally. When I first queued this up, I was expecting, I don't know, a standard, mildly charming children's bedtime story. But
Yeah.
what I got instead was a piece of media that, honestly, it entirely rewired my nervous system for about 45 minutes.
Oh, I had the exact same reaction, which is always the sign of a truly deceptive piece of art. I mean, deceptive in a good way. It presents itself as something incredibly simple. But under the hood, it is operating on several very sophisticated psychological and, well, philosophical levels at once.
Yeah, and the listener who sent this in actually provided us with a massive, just an incredible stack of supplementary material to help deconstruct what this broadcast is doing.
And it is a fascinating toolkit.
It's huge. I mean, our mission today is to figure out why this quiet story feels so deeply timeless and resonant. Like, how does a story with absolutely no villains, no high-stakes action sequences, and zero world-ending threats manage to completely captivate us?
Right, because we are so conditioned to need a villain.
Exactly. So we're going to explore how a forgotten lantern, an old road, and a gathering of woodland animals hold these massive secrets to gratitude and community. And we are going to use some heavy hitters to do it. We've got G.K. Chesterton's Philosophy of Wonder. We've got The Poetry of Childhood from Robert Louis Stevenson and Kenneth Grahame, Henry David Thoreau's Theology of the Wild.
Not to mention Joseph Campbell on myth, Washington Irving, and even some modern academic frameworks on deep ecology.
Right, and since we are in the reading room, we also have to weave in some brilliant insights from J.R.R. Tolkien, C.S. Lewis, Roger Scruton, and even the Rule of St. Benedict. It is a stacked lineup.
It really is. But we should probably start with the most structurally audacious thing this broadcast does right out of the gate, because it's not just telling a new story in a vacuum. It is actively mashing up two massive, deeply established literary properties.
Yeah, let's talk about the setting, because Woodland Stories takes the 100-acre woods, so that's Pooh, Piglet, Rabbit, Eeyore, Owl, and it connects that geography to the riverbank from The Wind and the Willows.
So mole, rat, and badger.
Right. And it doesn't do this through some sci-fi multiverse portal. It connects them via a forgotten physical location right in the middle of the woods called Bramble Bridge, and this overgrown path they just call the Old Road.
The geography itself is basically an inciting incident of the whole thing.
But I have to stop here and just push back for a second. We live in an era of cinematic universes, right? Every studio is trying to smash their intellectual properties together, and usually it just feels like a cynical corporate cash grab.
Oh, absolutely. Brand synergy masquerading as a story.
Exactly. So why doesn't Woodland Stories feel like a cheap crossover gimmick? Isn't it incredibly risky to mash up Pooh and the Wind and the Willows?
It is super risky. But the reason it works here is the motivation behind the integration. A corporate crossover usually operates purely on the level of plot. How do we get these two popular characters into the same room to punch the same bad guy?
Right, it's all about the spectacle.
Yeah. But what's happening here is a crossover of spirit. Both the 100-acre wood and the riverbank share a fundamental underlying ethos. They are both centered on this deep, deep harmony with nature and the inherent value of a localized community.
Oh, I see. Meaning they operate on the exact same philosophical frequency.
They do. They aren't governed by states or corporations. They're governed by proximity and mutual reliance, which actually brings in Roger Scruton's concept of oikophilia, this profound love of home and belonging.
Oikophilia. I like that.
Yeah, both sets of characters are deeply oikophilic. So by introducing Bramble Bridge, the story isn't just throwing Pooh and Mole into a room for a cameo. It's literally and figuratively joining their isolation. It turns neighboring solitudes into a shared heritage.
That's a huge distinction. It's not, Iron Man meeting Captain America. It's two isolated monasteries realizing they're built on the same mountain.
That is a perfect way to put it.
And you really see that shared spirit in how the characters interact with their environment from the very first scene. Because before we even get to the bridge, the broadcast establishes this incredibly deliberate tone. The woods are shrouded in mist. Pooh is just standing beneath an oak tree, listening.
Right? C.S. Lewis, in his essay on stories, talks a lot about this. He argues that the atmosphere of a story isn't just background decoration. The atmosphere is the story. The mood is the actual thing we are consuming.
And the mood here is so unhurried. There's this moment where Pooh is trying to decide which way to walk. He doesn't pull out a compass or a map. He just watches a wandering yellow leaf blow off his usual path, and he follows it.
And when the path disappears completely into the underbrush, he doesn't panic.
No. Most modern protagonists would immediately start, like, hacking their way through the brush or climbing a tree to map the area.
But Pooh just stands still. The text literally says he waits until he feels, quote, one direction looked less impossible than the others.
Which is just beautiful. And this brings us to the source text you mentioned earlier on Deep Ecology and Children's Literature by Tessa Strickland. She writes about the specific psychological space the pastoral setting provides.
Yeah, she argues that a true pastoral isn't just about pretty trees and babbling brooks. It is a space where, and this is a great quote, life is suspended and time stops long enough to hear the heartbeat.
Let me make sure I'm wrapping my head around that. When she says life is suspended, she means our normal human-centric timeline, like deadlines, schedules, the ticking clock, all of that is forcibly paused.
That is the core of it, yeah.
Yeah.
The human technosphere operates on mechanical time. It's linear, it's urgent, it's constantly pushing forward. The pastoral world operates on biological or ecological time. It's cyclical.
It's unhurried.
Exactly. So when the broadcast starts with Pooh standing still, waiting for the landscape to suggest a path rather than forcing his will upon it, we, the listeners, are being invited to step out of mechanical time. We are being asked to suspend our own modern anxieties.
That explains why my nervous system felt like it was downshifting while listening. But, and here is my big narrative cordon, if everyone is just operating on biological time, wandering around following leaves, where is the story?
Right, where is the tension?
Because the central conflict of this broadcast, and I'm using the word conflict very loosely here, is essentially just an unlit iron lantern hanging on this old, forgotten bridge, and the vague possibility that a traveler might be walking in the dark.
There is no ticking time bomb.
None. Nobody is trying to destroy the wood. So how on earth does a story with practically zero stakes hold a listener's attention for that long?
To understand the cognitive mechanics of why we stay engaged, we have to look at your sources on G.K. Chesterton, particularly his book Orthodoxy and the chapter called The Ethics of Elfland.
Oh, I love that chapter.
It's brilliant. Chesterton basically diagnosed a sickness in the modern adult mind. He argued that cynics and modern adults rely on rational excitement to feel anything. We need higher stakes, bigger explosions, faster cuts, but true vitality relies on wonder.
He has that fantastic comparison about children in there. He says a 7-year-old needs a dragon to be excited by a story, but a 3-year-old is excited merely by the fact that Tommy opened a door.
Yes, it's such a sharp observation about human development. Because the older we get, the more our brains filter out the mundane to save energy. A door on hinges just becomes a given.
It's just the thing we use to get to the kitchen.
Right, but to a 3-year-old, the mechanics of a hinge, the fact that a solid wall suddenly swings open to reveal a new room, that is a literal miracle of physics. Chesterton is pointing out that the 3-year-old is actually the one seeing the world accurately.
The adult is the one who's gone blind.
Precisely. And J.R.R. Tolkien talks about this too on fairy stories. He calls this process recovery. He says we need fairy stories to help us clean our windows, basically, so we can see ordinary things clearly again, without the film of familiarity.
I'm thinking about this in terms of how we consume media right now. It's like the difference between sitting in a theater watching a massive blockbuster action movie and sitting in your backyard staring at a campfire.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
Because the blockbuster relies on loud, exhausting excitement. It has to keep upping the stakes just to hold your attention. If there isn't a car chase every 10 minutes, you're checking your phone. But a campfire is just burning wood. There are no stakes.
None at all.
Yet it relies on this quiet, mesmerizing wonder. You can stare at the embers shifting for 3 hours and never feel exhausted.
Because the campfire doesn't demand your attention, it invites your contemplation. And Woodland Stories is operating entirely on that campfire level of profound existential wonder.
It's asking us to look at the fire, not the explosion.
Exactly. And Chesterton takes this concept even deeper, using the analogy of Robinson Crusoe. He notes that the best part of the Crusoe story isn't the survival mechanics, like how he builds a shelter. The best part is the inventory of the things saved from the shipwreck.
Because every item he pulls off the sinking ship suddenly has immense value.
Every ordinary tool, a pocket knife, a coil of rope, a few nails, they all become these miraculous, ideal objects because they so easily could have been swallowed by the sea. They survived against the odds.
Wow.
Chesterton viewed the entire universe through this lens. He saw existence itself as a single jewel saved from a shipwreck. Everything in it, a bridge, a lantern, a river, a tree, is a miraculous survivor of the void.
This completely shifts how I'm viewing Pooh and Piglet's reaction to finding Bramble Bridge.
Huh.
When they discover this old, unlit lantern hanging over the water, they don't treat it like a puzzle in a video game that they have to solve to get a reward.
No, they don't look for the practical utility of the lantern first. They don't say, oh good, now we can see better.
They treat it like a miraculous artifact saved from the wreck of time. There's a moment where Pooh literally reaches out, touches the cold iron of the lantern, and says, "Perhaps you were waiting too."
It's beautiful.
He's granting this inanimate object a kind of quiet dignity. The drama isn't whether they will defeat an enemy, the drama is whether they will remember how to be grateful for the light.
Chesterton writes that it is a good spiritual exercise to look at anything, like a coal scuttle or a bookcase, and think how happy one could be to have brought it out of the sinking ship onto a solitary island. That is the default lens through which Pooh sees the world.
Which means you don't need a villain to make a story interesting.
Not at all. When you operate with that level of gratitude, the mere fact that the lantern exists is thrilling enough.
Which brings us to the psychology of the characters themselves, because it would be so easy to dismiss Pooh and Piglet as just silly, simplistic animals. But the supplemental materials on Robert Louis Stevenson's A Child's Garden of Verses and Kenneth Grahame's The Golden Age, they really illuminate the depth here.
Yeah, they do. The Stevenson Review makes a fascinating point. It says that childhood is not merely a smaller version of adulthood, but a different scale of being altogether.
Wait, break that down for me. Are we talking about physical size or something more cognitive?
It's both, and they feed into each other. Think about Stevenson's poem about the land of counterpane. A child is sick in bed, and they look at the wrinkles in their blanket, their counterpane, and it becomes a complete topography of hills and valleys for their toy soldiers.
Oh, right, because they're so close to it.
Right, because the child's physical world is restricted, they are small, they are confined to a room or a yard, their imagination expands downward into the micro details. An adult looks at a couch and sees a piece of furniture to sit on. A child looks at a couch and sees a fortress, a mountain range, a cave.
So by scaling down the physical world, you actually increase the imaginative stakes.
Exactly. Pooh operates entirely within this intimacy of scale. His world is scaled to the immediate, local mystery of the lantern on the bridge and his very real, pressing desire for breakfast.
And crucially, both of those things hold equal, serious weight in his mind.
Yes. He doesn't hierarchicalize his experiences the way adults do. A missing pot of honey is just as urgent as an ancient mystery.
And Kenneth Grahame touches on this exact adult blindness in The Golden Age. He contrasts children with what he calls Olympians.
The Olympians, right.
These are the adults who have completely forgotten how to be young. They're rigid, they're rule-bound, they're obsessed with propriety and schedules. They basically lack all imagination.
And if you notice, in Woodland Stories, there are no Olympians to come in and ruin the magic. The human world is entirely absent. Christopher Robin isn't there. There's no adult narrator stepping in to explain things away.
The animals themselves are the stewards of their own golden age.
Yeah, which is so rare in children's literature today. Usually there's an adult winking at the audience.
I can see why that's important structurally. If an Olympian, an adult human figure, were to step onto Bramble Bridge, they would immediately categorize it. They'd assign ownership to the lantern. They'd probably form a municipal committee to manage its upkeep. And they would strip the wonder right out of the discovery.
They put a plaque on it and stop looking at it.
Exactly. But I have to play devil's advocate here. By entirely removing the adult world and keeping everything so scaled down and innocent, doesn't the story risk becoming pure escapist fluff? Doesn't it just become a nostalgic retreat that fails to say anything meaningful about real, complicated life?
It's a really common critique of this genre. People assume that because a story features talking animals and no violence, it must be shallow. But the Stevenson source pushes back on that heavily.
How so?
It notes that childhood, and by extension, stories that genuinely capture the true spirit of childhood, contain real melancholy, profound vulnerability, and intense loneliness.
Yeah.
Childhood is not unbroken sunshine.
It's very true. When you're small, you have very little control over your life, which is terrifying.
And you see that terror and melancholy treated with total respect in Woodland Stories. Piglet is genuinely, viscerally afraid of the dark. He seeks physical comfort by holding Pooh's paw.
Oh, and Mole experiences the sorrow of forgotten history. There's this quiet, heartbreaking moment where he remembers his father looking out for the welcome light, this tradition that has just died.
Yeah, that sense of loss is palpable.
And then you have Claire the Dormouse, who feels the sharp vulnerability of being lost. The sequence with Clara is incredibly poignant. She's out there in the rain on the old road 15 years after she was last there.
Just trying to find her way.
She's tired, she's cold, and she's just desperately hoping the light will be on. That isn't escapist fluff. That is a depiction of profound existential isolation.
Right, the broadcast treats these emotions with total artistic seriousness. It doesn't condescend to Piglet's fear or Mole's nostalgia. It recognizes that the fears and sorrows of childhood, fear of the dark, fear of being lost, the sadness of forgetting the past, these are the exact same fears and sorrows we carry as adults.
We just dress them up in sophisticated adult armor. We call fear of the dark anxiety about the unknown. We call the sadness of forgetting cultural displacement.
But the emotional core is identical. And Tolkien would say this isn't escapism in a cowardly way. It's what he calls the escape of the prisoner. We are escaping the ugly, mechanized modern world to recover a sense of true reality.
That is profound. I want to pivot slightly to how these characters interact with the natural world around them, because this is where the philosophy gets deeply, practically applicable. We have this academic source from Lydia Wilski-Cielo on Henry David Thoreau's Theology of the Wild.
Fantastic essay.
It is. When you map Thoreau's ideas onto this story, you see a stark, intentional contrast between how Rabbit approaches the mystery of the bridge and how Pooh approaches it.
It's a brilliant juxtaposition that gets right to the heart of how modern society views nature. Rabbit embodies what Thoreau heavily criticized as the clerk of science.
Let's look at Rabbit's reaction. When he finds out about Bramble Bridge, he doesn't pause in wonder. He immediately gets out paper and a pencil, he draws maps, he starts making lists.
He demands to know the exact width of the string.
Yes, who built the bridge. And he proudly announces he has categorized the information into 3 or 4 accounts. He is desperate to inventory the mystery.
Thoreau argued that science without reverence deadens nature's divinity. He felt that the natural history books of his time were often just, as he put it, hasty schedules or inventories of God's property.
Wow. Inventories of God's property.
Rabbit is literally taking an inventory of God's property. He wants to conquer the landscape with data. He believes that if he can measure the bridge, he understands the bridge.
Which is the ultimate Olympian mindset, right? We do this constantly today. We track our sleep, we count our steps, we use GPS to optimize our hiking routes. We try to master our environment through quantification.
And we lose the poetry of it in the process.
Exactly. But contrast Rabbit with Pooh. Pooh acts as Thoreau's mystic, or his poet.
Thoreau believed that to truly understand the divine in nature, one had to possess a true sauntering eye. You don't march through the woods to conquer them, you saunter. Thoreau loved to claim that the word saunter derived from saunter, meaning holy land.
No, that's fascinating.
So the true saunterer is walking on sacred ground. They aren't trying to get from point A to point B efficiently, they are present in the geography.
Pooh is the ultimate saunterer. He has zero interest in efficiency.
He possesses what Thoreau admired in the indigenous guides he traveled with in Maine. Thoreau noted they had sharpened and educated senses. They didn't need maps because they read the subtle signs of the environment.
And Pooh listens to the wood. He hears the subtle knocking in the trees. He notices the specific way the mist hangs. He has achieved a kind of total spiritual integration with his environment.
Which connects directly to the deep ecology source from Tessa Strickland. She talks about eco-awareness and something called an animistic cosmology.
Okay, let's unpack the jargon. When she says animistic cosmology in the context of deep ecology, is she talking about a literal religious belief that trees have souls? Or is this a literary framework for understanding interconnectedness?
In the context of deep ecology and this literature, it's primarily a framework, though it borders on the spiritual. It's the absolute rejection of the idea that humans are the main characters of the universe acting on a passive stage made of dirt and wood.
We aren't just walking on a backdrop?
No, an animistic cosmology asks us to experience the ecological system from within. It suggests that the environment has agency, memory, and a kind of consciousness.
You see that vividly in the broadcast. There is a spine-tingling moment when the animals finally decide to light the lantern. The light catches the mist, and it illuminates the old road stretching back into the trees. Piglet gasps, looks around and says, "The wood remembers."
That one line, "the wood remembers," is the entire thesis of deep ecology distilled into a children's story. The environment is a participant. The trees, the river, the old road, they have memory.
When the animals light the lantern, they aren't imposing their will on nature the way Rabbit tries to with his measuring tape.
No, they are cooperating with it. They're remembering their place within a larger living system that predates them and will absolutely outlast them.
That brings us perfectly to the physical objects in the story. We've talked about the natural world, but how do these characters interact with the man-made things left behind? What happens when this natural mystic, Pooh, encounters something artificial, like an iron lantern or a stone bridge?
Well, according to your source on Joseph Campbell's The Power of Myth, mythological symbols aren't just arbitrary objects. They are mechanisms that bring profound meaning to the human experience.
Campbell famously noted that myths are the song of the universe. Symbols in myth are keys that unlock deep universal psychological truths.
Yes, and biblical imagery plays heavily into this too, which is another layer of the text. Light in the darkness, the ancient paths, these are primal ancient symbols.
So what is the archetype of the lantern doing here? I'm looking at it and I can't help but think of it as a signal fire. Is Campbell arguing that the lantern taps into some primal human need for safety?
Absolutely. The lantern is one of the oldest human archetypes. It represents the inner light of consciousness, guidance through the dark, safety against the unknown, and above all, hospitality.
It's the lamp unto my feet, essentially.
Exactly. A lit lantern in a window or on a bridge is a universal beacon. It communicates across language barriers. It says, you are not alone, you are seen, and there's a safe harbor here.
And what about the bridge and the road? We have this really interesting source on Washington Irving, specifically his writings on English antiquity in the sketchbook.
Irving is so good on this topic.
He wrote about the deep human desire to escape the commonplace realities of the present by meditating on the ruins of the past. He loved moldering stones, falling towers, overgrown paths. Bramble Bridge functions exactly like this, doesn't it? It's a ruin of an older, perhaps better time.
It does. But Irving wasn't just being romantic for the sake of aesthetics. He noticed something vital about sociology. In rural England, when the local gentry actively revived old customs like bringing back traditional games at Christmas or maintaining old communal spaces, it had a profound psychological effect on the peasantry.
It grounded the community. It created social stability.
Because it gave them a shared narrative. Irving believed that sustaining tradition tied people to their physical homes and to each other. When a community loses its connection to its past, when the old roads overgrow, the community becomes unmoored.
People become isolated individuals rather than a collective.
Yes.
That completely explains the melancholic realization the animals have in the story. When Milne says he had forgotten about the tradition of lamps in the window, and Rat admits he had forgotten about the boats gathering on the river, they are experiencing that exact modern disconnect from antiquity.
They've let their traditions lapse.
And therefore their community has frayed just a little bit. The old road has grown over because everyone uses newer, faster paths.
Because the modern impulse is always efficiency. Why walk the winding old road when you can cut straight across the meadow?
But the cost of that efficiency is isolation. You stop crossing paths with your neighbors.
Lighting the lantern on Bramble Bridge again is their way of reaching back into antiquity. It's a rejection of pure efficiency in favor of reestablishing their community's historical and spiritual stability.
Which leads us to the climax of the story and this incredible thematic focus on hospitality. We mentioned Clara the Dormouse earlier. She finally arrives at the bridge in the rain. She strikes the match, she lights the lantern, and this single act triggers a breathtaking chain reaction across the entire geography.
It is a brilliant cascading effect.
Window lamps are lit all along the riverbank. Hill lamps are lit up in the 100-acre wood. And Rat, seeing the light, leads a whole fleet of boats out onto the water because, as he remembers from an old book, the river must bear its stars. The visual imagery conjured by the audio is just stunning.
It is stunning, and it carries immense thematic weight regarding the concept of hospitality. And this is where the source on the Rule of St. Benedict becomes so relevant.
Oh, right, radical hospitality.
Yes. True hospitality, in the traditional ancient sense, the Benedictine sense, is not just about entertaining your friends or hosting a dinner party. It is about anticipating the needs of the stranger. It's about welcoming the guest as if they were Christ.
It's preparing a place for someone who has not yet arrived without knowing who they are, what they look like, or what you will get in return.
Exactly. Clara lights the lantern not just for herself, but because she knows someone else might be behind her in the dark.
But it's the aftermath of this event that I think contains the most important philosophical point in the entire broadcast.
The scene at the boathouse.
Right. The animals are all gathered at the boathouse. They're drinking tea. They're celebrating. They're warm. And Birch the squirrel, who is trying to be genuinely helpful, suggests that they appoint an official keeper of the lantern.
He thinks someone needs to be in charge of making sure it's lit every night from now on.
And Rabbit, naturally, thinks this is a fantastic idea. It's efficient. It's categorized. But Clara and Mrs. Fieldmouse immediately, almost violently, reject the idea. Why?
Because Clara remembers a lesson from her grandfather. He taught her that traditions have only one true enemy, and that enemy is the assumption that someone else will do it.
Wow.
If you appoint an official keeper of the lantern, you institutionalize the kindness. And the moment you institutionalize it, you kill the organic spirit of it.
I see this all the time in modern communities. It's exactly like when a neighborhood relies entirely on one hyperactive HOA president to organize everything and solve every problem. Nobody else lifts a finger because that's the HOA's job.
Right.
If a tree branch falls in the street, they don't move it, they just call the president to complain about it. Contrast that with a neighborhood that has no formal association, where everyone just instinctively shovels each other's driveways after a snowstorm because they notice it needs doing.
That is a perfect parallel. The institutionalization of a duty actually destroys the organic community instinct to care for one another. The broadcast is making a very sophisticated sociological argument here.
It's arguing that real, lasting community isn't built on official titles, grand heroics, or bureaucratic schedules. It is built on individual, ordinary acts of noticing.
The story explicitly says the light belonged to whoever noticed and whoever happened to have oil. It requires active participation and vigilance from everyone, not just an appointed official.
Which brings our entire discussion a full circle back to G.K. Chesterton. Chesterton's philosophy of wonder isn't just about feeling awe, it's about translating that awe into action.
It's about taking existence with gratitude rather than taking it for granted.
I see the connection. If there's an official keeper of the lantern, you take the light for granted. You expect it to be on the same way you expect the streetlights to turn on at dusk. You feel entitled to it.
And entitlement is the death of wonder. But if the light only shines because a neighbor happened to notice the dark and cared enough to walk out into the cold and strike a match well, then the light becomes an active daily expression of gratitude for the community.
You cannot take it for granted because it requires constant voluntary renewal.
It becomes a daily choice.
So how do we synthesize the journey we've been on today? Because we started with a bear staring at a leaf, and we've ended up dissecting the sociological foundations of community, the Benedictine rule of hospitality, and the deepest nature of gratitude.
It is quite the journey.
We've seen how Woodland Stories acts as a profound piece of pastoral deep ecology, forcing the listener to step out of mechanical time and listen to the biological heartbeat of the natural world.
We've explored how it leverages the true cognitive wonder of ordinary things championed by Chesterton, treating a simple iron lantern like a priceless jewel saved from a shipwreck.
And we've seen how it honors the serious, melancholic intimacy of childhood noted by Stevenson. And finally, how it revives the mythic antiquity and tradition praised by Irving to ground a fractured community.
The brilliance of the broadcast is that it weaves all these heavy, profound philosophical concepts together so gently that you barely realize you're being taught anything. It doesn't lecture you.
It just invites you to spend an evening in the company of old friends, lingering over tea, and in doing so, it slowly reteaches you how to see your own world.
It really does.
I want to leave you, the listener, with a final thought to mull over. At the very end of the story, Badger is talking with the others about the mystery of the bridge. They still don't know exactly who built it. They don't know where the tradition originally started centuries ago.
And Rabbit is probably losing his mind over that.
He is. But Badger, rather than demanding an investigation like Rabbit, simply says, I like not knowing. If every old story is explained entirely, people stop walking the old roads.
It is a quiet, powerful warning against our modern obsession with data, categorization, and absolute certainty.
It really is. In our modern lives, we are obsessed with explaining, tracking, and optimizing every single thing. We want all the answers right now, preferably delivered to our phones in bullet points.
We want the inventory.
We act like rabbit, constantly making our lists, demanding coordinates, and inventorying the mysteries of our lives until they aren't mysteries anymore. But what if we allowed a few uncertainties to remain? What if we let a little mystery survive in the margins of our schedules?
It's a question worth sitting with.
Think about your own life, your own neighborhood, your own routines. What is the welcome light you can leave burning for a stranger without demanding to know who they are, when they will arrive, or what you will get in return? Let that mystery keep you walking the old roads.
And remember that the lantern at Bramble Bridge is really only the beginning.
Exactly. The welcome light still burns, the bridge still stands, and somewhere beyond the next bend, another woodland story is already waiting. Keep finding the miraculous in the ordinary things around you. Thank you for joining us in the reading room today. This has been a Chesterton radio broadcast from the little station on Commercial Street. We will see you back here next time.